All right, today we're continuing our conversation on leading with longevity and why it's important to build a culture where people actually want to stick around. Not only benefits them, but it benefits the business. So, we've talked about several different aspects of helping to build that culture of really ultimately comes down to trust, right? Like if you trust your team and they trust you, like that is the recipe for longevity and long-term success. So one of the things that we talked about the other day was, trusting the people who are kind of on the front line, who are relating every day with your customers, who are working on building your products and really creating what is ultimately driving the business forward. What does that look like in terms of, trusting them and listening to them and making decisions based on that feedback?
Brent, one of the things I've always said is that it is our responsibility to hire well on the front end. So we do a really good job of hiring people. And once we do that, it's our responsibility to trust these people as they earn it on our team. And so we can't just constantly have people in this mode of proving themselves, proving themselves, proving themselves. At some point,
Mhm.
we've got to let them fly and be free and go do their jobs. And one of the ways that we can show them we trust them is to listen to their input and make decisions that include their opinions and their experiences on the front lines of the business. One of the things I see a lot of owners do as a founder, as an owner, you've probably done every job in the business. I can remember we first started the referral program at Ramsey. I was faxing things, I was making cold calls, I was making sales calls to agents and customers, and I was even helping build the website. I think we've talked about this a little bit, doing everything. And you feel like you kind of know the business. But the truth is these things in our business, they grow and change. And if you are still the expert on some area of the business and you hadn't worked in it in 5 years, you're going to lose a lot of credibility if you continue to act like you still have the sale everybody should be using, that you hadn't used in 5 years, or you've got the perfect way to put the customer journey together on the website, even though you hadn't touched it in years.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to be willing to listen to the people who are on the front lines. The analogy I always use is, you're in wartime and you've got soldiers in the trenches on the front lines, bayonet to bayonet, fighting the enemy. They're going to know a lot more about the pulse of what's happening on the front lines than you will if you're a mile back at base camp with your big map out and strategizing about where we're going to go next. You've got to listen to those people when they come back to you and say, hey, we are experiencing something in customer service that we haven't seen in a long time or ever. And I'm thinking we need to pivot a little bit on how we approach this problem. Or our sales calls are not producing what they used to. There seems to be a shift in how our consumers are relating to our product. My suggestion is we look at it a different way. So we've got to be open to those ideas. And when you're open to them, you build tremendous trust with your team. And again, like we've been saying, they're going to want to stay longer if their opinions are valued and if they see you making decisions on the intel that they bring to you as the leader.
Well, yeah, I can think of many examples where I've been in the seat that I had the idea and the owner was like, "Wow, where'd that come from? That's brilliant. We should try that." Like that gives you like energy and life and makes you want
That's
to be
right.
like, "Let's go." And I've been on the other side where it's like, "Hey, I'm stuck, we're trying to figure this out." And someone on the team like, "What about this? Have you ever thought of doing it this way?" And it's like, "Wow, that's great. Yeah, totally. We should go down that road." And it's energizing to the team when you feel like you're all kind of on the same playing field relative to contribution, right? You mentioned the example earlier of if you tell a fish to climb a tree, he's never going to feel valued, and it's so simple, but yes, it's so true. Just give people the space to be themselves and watch them thrive.
I want to see them bring ideas. That's another way you can build trust with people is
Mhm.
ask them what they believe the solution to the problem is. Now, you're going to be there for that wise counsel and that big picture understanding of how the business works, but make sure you throw that hot potato back in their lap and say, what do you think we need to do about this problem? And then you can guide and coach their response to that. And again, provide wise counsel. But just as you're trusting them to bring you this information, then you need to also trust them to help be a part of the solution and make sure they're bringing the thoughts and the ideas. Because again, the person on the front line who is dealing with the problem, probably has some pretty good ideas on what might solve that problem. So maybe a side part of this is don't feel like you have to have all the answers as the owner or as the founder. That's another trap I see, is that some owners begin to feel a little bit like they're not as valuable anymore because they don't have the new idea for everything. But again, that's not your role. Your role is to bring it out of the people that you've hired, and coach them in a way that helps them solve these problems themselves.
Yeah, and back to the idea of the owner has some responsibility here. Like you and I, one of our core values as a team is that humility is, priority here. And if you're not humble, you're going to have a real hard time accepting any idea that isn't yours. I've even seen leaders take credit for ideas that weren't theirs, which is another layer of arrogance that, that's a whole other conversation. But as a lead, you've got to set that expectation that, hey, there's there's no dictatorship here in terms of ideation. It's a democracy, and there's a lot of good ideas, and it's just really about finding the one or the set of principles that are going to lead us forward versus, whose idea it was, or when they had it, or who gets credit for it. The saying goes, if you don't care who gets the credit, you can really go a long way. And so I think that applies here.
Yeah, and people, I've had a lot of success in my career caring more about getting the results than where the ideas came from. That is going to, if you can start by with the principle of success outcomes or what we care about, not credit, to your point, that's going to cause your team to just come to life with ideas because we're all aiming at the same thing, which is the result, the goal, the end thing, and not the goal of I need to get credit for this idea or I need to be the author of the new thing that we do in the company. That'll
Mhm.
choke out teamwork and it'll choke out good ideas. But people love to be a part of a group where it's almost like a band of brothers where yeah, you are the leader, but really what you're there for is to remove obstacles. That's really, to me, when I think of leadership, it's not the guy sitting on the throne, telling everybody what to do. It's the person who's moving obstacles out of the way for their team so that they can be successful. So when they come to me from the front lines with a problem, with something new that's going on, my role there is to remove the things in the way of them solving their own problem, not me coming up with the new, biggest, latest, greatest idea. That really is largely on them if it's their area. My job is to go, what can I do to make this possible for you to solve this problem?
So I think now we want to give some real practical advice here and some tools for helping people lay out a roadmap for a growth plan, if you will. I mean, like you mentioned earlier, big reason people leave is because they have a bad manager. Another big reason people leave is because they don't have a growth plan. They don't see a future where they can actually build a career. It's kind of like, hey, I've maxed out what I'm doing in this seat. I don't see any other opportunities. It's time to bounce. How can we kind of help leaders figure out a growth plan for their teams, not just collectively, but even like individual roles?
I think it begins in the very beginning of working with somebody is that we need to know what their career goals are, where they want to go, and what they want to be. And then we make that a part of our regular check ins with those individuals, at least on a quarterly basis, to make sure that we are tracking on that future that they had in mind. If you pigeonhole someone into something that they don't want to be in, you will run them off. But if we all agree on what success looks like in the current role and then what that success can lead to in the future, then you've got somebody with some motivation and you've got somebody with a desire to stay because we've agreed on what success looks like. A lot of times what will happen is you get somebody on the team and the leader doesn't really know where they want to go, and you've got a team member over here who has an idea in mind of where they want to be, and there's a mismatch. And so, the owner may or the leader may be perfectly content to just let them sit there and sell for years and years and years. And that person might be thinking, man, I really wanted to be a sales leader, and no one's talking to me about that. So, having those conversations on the front end and agreeing what success looks like for their career, and then having regular check ins to make sure that's still true is going to go a long way to helping people feel like there is a path to fulfillment in their career and they're not just going to stall out somewhere in the future. And if you have regular check-ins about it, you can catch moments where maybe things have shifted for that person. Maybe they found something else they're interested in, or maybe they have really discovered they love right where they are and they maybe don't want to move as fast. Those are other conversations that we need to have with people. But doing it intentionally early will make sure that you don't lose people simply because there was a mismatch in what you thought their future was and what they wanted it to be.
Yeah. So I've got a couple of examples here. One, I mean, again, recently inheriting a team, a lot of the people were hired to do one thing, but because of the shifts and the needs of the business, ended up doing other things that was not what they signed up for and not necessarily long term, like a good skill fit, even. And so, like they're struggling with like burnout. They're not necessarily wanting to go, but like the work is not conducive to keeping them engaged. So, how can you balance the business need? Because again, small businesses, there's a lot of needs with helping this person see a path for growth that is
Yeah, well,
really
and the
custom
situation
to
that
them.
the thing that you just articulated there is a specific situation where you've had some change in the company, and maybe you've got some folks that because of the change in the company, we may not have the same opportunities that we had before. And for me, back to your whole humble, treat people well, we always want to start with, all right, number one, would we rehire this person again? And if the answer is absolutely, we love this person, want them, great. All right. Now that we begin the process of seeing if we can find a place that works for them and for us. If we look at them and go, no, we would not hire this person again, it's time to start having a conversation about, the off ramp. But once we decide we want to keep them, then we look to see if there are opportunities for them to fit. And I have found that oftentimes when you've got good people, you can find an opportunity to plug them into something. But let's be real. In the early days of a small business, that's not always possible.
Yeah.
When our business started to grow and we were really, really winning at a high level, you could afford to have a position develop over 6 months. We said, hey, we don't have it today, but in 6 months, we're definitely going to need this role and this person fits it. We make that happen. But when every month is hand to mouth and you're new in the business, that's not usually a luxury you have. That means that person is going to have to be a really good fit right up front for that role. And then we want to move that person into that role. But we're not ever going to sink the business. Businesses don't exist to create jobs, okay? That's not the purpose of what we're there for. We're not there to just, be a charity. So first, the business has to be successful. And if we can find a way to repurpose those individuals into something that gives them meaning and value, we will. I ran into that very, very recently helping a particular business, and they were really struggling to meet payroll and things were not going as planned. And there was somebody on the team that we all really loved, but there just wasn't a skill fit for that person.
Mm.
And so that person, was not going to be able to stay on the team, but we worked with them so that they knew that was the case. They had plenty of time to go out and figure out what they were going to do next, but it would have sunk the business to keep that person around. So I don't think that makes a lot of sense, long term.
All right. One of the big principles that a lot of businesses miss in terms of keeping people around for the long term is sharing the win. I mean, if the company's doing well, the business is doing well on the backs of your team, I think, spreading that around and showing that appreciation in an appropriate way goes a long way to building longevity and loyalty. Talk a little bit about that. What's the difference between rewarding people for effort and rewarding people who just endure?
Now, I can say that the compensation structure for me personally has been one of the most important parts of my career. My business love language is dollar bills. I like to succeed by winning financially. And so if I'm going to put in enormous amount of time, talent, and treasure into something, I want to know there's going to be a payoff for that. And I have personally never liked ceilings. I love to know that if I work hard, I can make more. That's why I've always been very attracted to sales roles and then later into profit and loss roles where I was able to be, as Dave would always say, my raise was effective when I was effective. And so I love those types of roles. And I'm willing to take the risk of not making anything if I have the opportunity to make a lot of money. And
Mm.
so that is a part of my personality. And it's a part of a lot of people's personality.
Yeah.
But I would say it's important to understand the differences in types of team members. I learned this years ago that Salespeople and P&L people are not motivated the same as assistants and administrative people are, or web developers. They think very, very differently. We can have a whole conversation about, you may or may not remember it, Ramsey, when we were doing profit sharing, the utter shock that we had to discover that our admin assistants didn't think about that the same way our salespeople did. And it led to enormous confusion and some hurt feelings. And so understanding, what do these people value? What makes them feel appreciated? For some people, it's going to be big comp packages.
Hmm.
Some people, it's extra time off to go be with their family or something along those lines that's less financially tied and much more about lifestyle. So we've got to understand what their business love language is when it comes to compensation. But generally speaking, I like models that when the company wins, these people win at a higher level. We don't want to be the pizza party company where the big cats at the top are walking out with these, checks, so, bags of money so big you can't carry it. And then everybody else is down there getting their mini slice of pizza for a job well done. That is crazy. And so finding a way to set a nice chunk of profit aside for the team, and then making sure they understand that this was given to them because of their part in the overall success of the company. It's not a handout. It is not expected. It happened because you were effective. If you can have that conversation with people and let them see the numbers and be transparent with them, they're going to now have something invested in the company and want to see the company win. If a person makes the same money or gets the same benefits, whether the company wins or loses, they're not going to ultimately care down the road what happens. But if they see their paycheck go up, if they see more days off, or something else that they value happen because of their work, they're more likely to put in the extra effort to go make that happen. One principle I'll use, especially when you're talking about financial incentives, is that we always worked on a model that I always made a little bit less than the boss above me. And that boss also always made a little bit less than the boss above him. So it was a trickle down effect where everybody was happy that the person below them was making money. And that may sound real obvious, but it actually isn't always. For instance, on a P&L model, if you've got a P&L leader who is paid off the bottom and a sales leader who had a really, really good month, who has no expense exposure, they can end up getting real close to each other, and the wires can even cross on pay
Hmm.
if you're not careful. That actually happened to me and my boss one time, where I was running a highly profitable section of the company, and he was over multiple sections of the company, and he had a really bad month in 3 areas. I had a really good month in one. We got dangerously close, and that was not fun, and it didn't feel good anymore. And so working on plans that make sure that when I win, the guy above me is winning higher than I am. Everybody loves to see it go that way. And then, but it does, it has to be pushed down the mountain as well. The guy above me can't take too much home, or I'm going to be mad and I'm not going to want to participate in this.
Hmm.
That goes all the way down the pipe to the sales team and to the admin team. We have to make sure they're being compensated well. And then when it comes to your salaried people, we got to be competitive, and we have to find benefits that attract those people to our company. And probably for another day, we can get into things like working from home and time off and work-life balance. All those things can be intangible things, or really tangible things that are not related to pay, that can motivate people and demonstrate the company's appreciation for what they've done to get the bottom line to where it is today.
Yeah, even the idea of winning as a team, like that's a huge motivator for me. When you see the scoreboard and it's visible to everybody, you can like rally people around, like, hey, this is what we've got to do in order to win. And when you do that collectively, knowing what the result is once you do win and setting that expectation, that really gets people motivated versus just like it's all like a mystery. Like I've worked for companies like, are we doing okay? Are we not? What's going on? Even in a leadership position, not having an expectation of like how to plan or budget, or, what you can expect in terms of compensation if certain milestones are met. It's kind of like, what are we even doing here? Is this legit? Is this a real business? So yeah, the idea, if you're not like collectively moving towards an objective that involves everyone, what are you doing? So
That's
be
right.
be very attentive to that, because whether you have people that are motivated by the public success or the recognition or the financial success or the promotion opportunities. Know what those motivators are and make sure you're setting them up for success.
You nailed it, Brent. One of the things that you mentioned there that's such a key to this whole conversation is transparency. When people feel like things are being kept from them, when they don't see the big picture and how they fit into it, they can get a little disillusioned. And there's a darker side to this too, and that is that when people don't see what's going on behind the curtain, when the great and powerful Oz is back there pulling the levers, they can start getting a little conspiratorial sometimes, and they start dreaming up things that are not at all true about the company. But because you failed to tell them what's actually going on, people's intuition typically leads them to the worst case scenario. And so I think it's important when it comes to financials, within reason, but especially when it comes around projects that the team is all working on, we have to say, what does success look like? And how did we do? And what does your world look like if we hit these goals? That level of transparency is huge because people can then measure whether or not they're doing their part to get us to the goal. And it protects the company from the whole conspiratorial concept of, what is actually going on behind the scenes here? Are we really even getting anywhere? And do I even have a role in all this? Does it even matter? That's an important part of this. And when you're transparent, man, you can share everything and you can let them know, hey guys, we really are behind the eight ball on this goal and we're behind by this much. And it's going to take this many sales calls on this many lines of code, this many admin calls to get this goal over the finish line. But when you hide it, people don't know what to work with. They don't know what to aim at.
Yeah, that's good. So to kind of wrap this up, if you're a business owner trying to determine how loyal or in it for the long haul your team is, I mean, one thing you can do is ask them, hey, do you like working here? Hey, what would keep you around longer? Or, hey, have you thought about leaving at any time in the last few months? Like people, if you give people the space and the opportunity to be honest with you, they will. The other idea is look at who you have on your team and talk to the people that are thriving and be like, hey, what do you like about working here? Why are you so successful? What am I doing? What's the culture? Like, just because that's the thing you want to replicate, right? You want to take that and you want to amplify that behavior across your team. And you want to find other people who have that same light about them versus they come in and they're just not happy to be there. You've got a lot of authority and autonomy and ownership of this situation. Don't pretend like it's just happened because you've got all these people and you don't know what to do with them, right? Ultimately, it's your responsibility. Anything you'd add?
Yeah, one of the things I will say is that as an owner or as a leader of a business or organization, one of the most powerful things that you can do is self inspection. And it can be one of the hardest things that you'll ever do. And a lot of leaders don't do it well. But I just want to challenge anybody listening to this that, if you've listened to this and you hear some things that go, you know what? I probably could work on a few of these things. I would love to challenge you to give us a call and have a conversation about this. We have worked with lots of owners, lots of leaders, work through their own personal weaknesses as leaders. There is no lever in a business that will move it forward faster than a leader getting in touch with what they need to work on and making real effort to fix those things. Your team may be all sitting around knowing all the things that are wrong in the business and a lot of them may pertain to you. But if you're not willing to take those steps and ask another person, say, hey, where do I need some work? You may spend enormous amounts of time in your business wasting energy, effort, because you're in the way of some things. So I would challenge you to think about that and ask yourself, where am I deficient in some of these areas? And would it do me good to sit down with a couple of other veteran leaders and start maybe looking at my style and see if there's some things that I could do that could drastically improve the performance and efficiency of my business and how I lead people.
That's great. Check us out at howtobusinesscoaching.com to schedule that call, and we'll be happy to help you out. See you next time.
Thanks, Brent.